Hey y'all, what's up? It is myself, Cody Stoffer,
And I'm the other one, Simon Voyanos, aka Coach V.
and we got another one for y'all being our top 5 seniors by position ongoing list where we are grading the top class of 24 athletes by position here in the box state of Colorado. And on this edition, we got wide receivers here. And so I just want to go over a quick little rundown here where we talk about the 10 categories and we grade them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 3 or 4 is below average. You can get benched for how bad the skill is. 4 to 6 is, it's average. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not great. It's not consistent, I guess, is the easy way to kind of classify that one. 7 to 8 is good. It's a consistent skill that they show, you know, pretty often in their film or in games, and it's rivaling that 2 borderline 3-star potential. 8 to 9, that's that 3-star, 4-star ish level of skill where this is a consistent skill. It's what makes them unique and special at their position. And then, in that 9 to 10 range, that's 4 to 5. That's elite. That's nationally pretty fantastic here. And so we give that score of 1 to 10 through these 10 categories here for receivers. The first one being route running, followed by hands/ball skills, separation/release, speed, elusiveness/agility, route tree, verticality/jump ball, body control, field awareness/vision, and blocking here. We add all those up for a score out of 100. And then between Coach V and myself, we average those scores out. And we watched a ton of receivers here. I mean, just on my screen directly in front of me is 10. And I looked at even more, whether that was throughout the season or watching for this and just maybe didn't decide to grade this or that for one reason or another. And so we average it out, and then booyah, that's our top 5 receiver list. So that's kind of the sitch right now with the 2024 receivers. Something else that we've introduced this season is watching the top prospect in the country and grading them. So we both took a look at Jeremiah Smith, who is committed to the Ohio State. Speaking, we were just talking about this off the air, Simon. But, we took a look at him and graded him. So that way we kind of had a baseline on nationally what is the best, and then how does Colorado stack up, or maybe not stack up to it as well. So I do want to say that, we've continued to grade a little bit more. I don't know if harsh is the right word, but we've been a lot more particular because we feel that, there has to be some tough love and some very more even intensified, recommendations of improvement from us to really help this state grow and progress. And another thing that we're doing for the first time and that we will actually witness on this episode is evaluating players on at multiple positions. Isn't that right, Coach V?
Yes, we will. This will actually be the first episode where we have not one, and this is maybe a little bit of a spoiler alert, but two players who, would have made 2 top 5 senior lists here. So we're really excited about that. I mean, we got to grade the best of the best. Like Cody said, we're being tougher out here, for a good reason here. For a good reason. It should be a privilege to make this a list because we do put in a lot of work. We watch a lot of receivers, look at a lot of little things between off season, in season stuff as well. And at this point, when doing this series, I mean, a lot of these guys we've seen for at least 2 or 3 years. Some of these guys we've seen back when they were sophomores. Back in the day, which is wild to think about, but we're really excited for this one, and this really should be a fun episode to do here, right, Cody?
Isn't it always when we get to talk about the receiver position? Big plays and definitely some wow moments to talk about, talking about all this film here. But, Coach V, do you want to take it away on this first guy here?
Yes, I will gladly do that. And by the way, it's December 21st, 2023 when we are recording this. But let's go ahead and hop into this here, starting with our number 5 receiver here in the class of 2024 in Colorado. It's Ponderosa's Carson Keach, the 6'3", I think technically 6'2", 198-pound athlete. If you remember correctly, he made our safety list. I'm not going to say where. You were just going to have to check out that episode for yourself. But here he is again, the first player ever in PMC history to make 2 top 5 senior lists, at least in the order that we're talking about this. Let's go ahead and hop into it. So, obviously made our safety list here. And in that evaluation, we talked about how good of a receiver he is with the frame and athleticism. And so in my grading, that is reflected with a 9 grading in hand/ball skills and a 9 in verticality and jump ball. A lot of the reasons why those ratings are so high is because he's a bigger dude at 6'2", 200, and man, can he jump. This white boy could definitely jump out there. He's a basketball player as well. I actually just saw one of his highlights of him yamming it on somebody because, the basketball season's going on right now here in Colorado. And, it was pretty cool. And that's the type of athleticism that he brings to a football field, a basketball player type who can jump out the gym, has an insane catch radius, and will go get it in one-on-one. And even if it's not one-on-one, he could make some pretty tough catches out there as well, just being so physical and, embracing that physicality and getting the ball and getting to that high point and, doing all those things to just get the catch, right? If you need a catch, he's going to get you one, plain and simple. He is an athletic beast out there that is going to dominate from a physical standpoint. Some other things I really like, gave him an 8.6 for speed and agility, 8.7 for body control, which I think is really underrated. But that does, tie into his catch radius and his ability overall to just catch a football. So there you go there. But talking a little bit more about speed and agility, he's not a stiff player out there. Like I said, he played safety as well, so he can cover a field. But especially on offense, he's somebody that could be a little bit of a mismatch, when it's one-on-one, whether it's before the catch or after the catch, he is pretty dangerous. He's somebody who could put a move on you and be gone if you're not playing him correctly, whether he has the ball in his hands or not. I'm plain and simple. So there you go there. We start out strong here with an athletic freak here in Carson Keach. Kodey, what do you think about Carson Keach and what I had to say about him? And, go ahead and talk about some of your areas of improvements as well after you talk about what makes his game so great.
Yeah, so Keach, it's really funny getting to just watch the same reel of film back to back. And, I remember being impressed by him, seeing him in person against Palmer Ridge. There were times, this was a team that was without, consistent quarterback play for a few weeks, Ponderosa that is. And Keach being able to jump up and make plays definitely kind of kept the defense on their heels and opened up other opportunities. Even if he didn't have his best performance that game, it definitely, forced the defense to not go all in on the box just because any quarterback can throw it up and Carson Keach can go make a play on it. And I think that's reflected in both my verticality/jump ball as well as the hand/ball skills. For his hand/ball skills, it's actually the highest grade of hands that I have on this top 5 list at an 8.7. It really just sticks anytime it gets to his hands and whatnot. And, I think that is something to, definitely take note of when he's making these one-handed catches on the boundary, and he's adjusting to the ball very, very well here, which is something that I also take into account for ball skills, is when it's up in the air, do you undercut those cornerbacks and come back to the ball and make a play that way, which I think is very important and something that I've had way more of an eye on this time around watching receivers. Are they waiting for the ball to come to them, or are they attacking the football and then attacking the defense? Because I just think that we need to be showing a level of aggressiveness that, maybe people don't associate with the receiver position. And I think that what Carson is doing does exactly that. In addition, I have his verticality/jump ball at an 8.5. I wish that they threw him more jump balls, especially in the red zone, just because I believe that the capability is there, the height is there, and the athleticism is there as well. So, and not only that, but also his ability to high point the ball just combines so nicely with his hand/ball skills. And so those go very well hand in hand. I also wanted to give him a shout out on field awareness/vision, just because I don't have his speed graded as the highest thing, but he is able to still pick up good chunks of yards because he's finding the soft spots in the defense, whether he has the ball in his hands and he's making maneuvers. You could also see this in his ability to punt return, kick return, interception return, and obviously catching the ball on screens and whatnot and getting into the open field to make some plays. So I love all of that for him. And, finding those pockets in the defense as well, running those routes is pretty solid as well. Now, I have some kind of average scores for a bunch of other stuff, but I wanted to talk about the lowest scores here. And one score that I've kind of noticed is going to be the lowest for literally every single prospect in this particular top 5. There were some guys who had better route trees who didn't make the top 5, so I will be sure in the honorable mentions to shout out those coaching staffs. But Carson Keach's route tree was frustrating to watch. I think that he was underutilized in this offense, honestly. And, I don't think that he was able to show the full extent of his skills. And then, honestly, I think that he's not the easiest at turning and changing direction. I still think that he's elusive and he can shed tackles quite a bit. But I have his route tree at a 5.7, which is actually the lowest out of here because it's basically goes and screens almost exclusively. There are obviously some other routes thrown in there, and he does a good job of finding the open space on like those post routes and whatnot, which is why his route running is still at a 7.9, despite his route tree not being the most extensive. He does run the routes well. And then his elusiveness/agility, I have it graded at a 7.1. He just doesn't show me the same wiggle that a lot of these other guys really do, if I'm being completely honest, and the ability to just stop and start doesn't really flash off the film, I would say, and to change direction super swiftly. Not saying that he can't. I mean, 7.1 I think is still pretty fair. That puts him in like a 2-star of elusiveness and agility, and I think that that's pretty fair. And then speed-wise, I do have it graded at a 7.4. I just see him get caught from behind probably a few too many times here. I do want to note that with his size, frame, and strides, that he can cover a lot of ground, but I just wasn't really blown away at him, like splitting safeties or taking off. And Coach V and I talked about this a little bit off the air as well through text about, it's cool, like in my eyes, it's cool if you can run a really fast 40, but it doesn't mean as much to me if you can't replicate that. Not obviously like millisecond for millisecond, of course, but if your speed isn't being used as a weapon on the field, I feel like it's a lot harder for me to give you your flowers in that category and to, reward you for that. I do think that, there's some things here kind of in the middle, like his route running, his separation/release, his body control. I have all of those at a 7.9. I think that, he's somebody who can win in double teams mainly due to his size and ability to jump. But, he throws in a little head nod here and there. And, off the line, he's physical enough to push off of press and, beat some of those looks that are given to him. But just not at a super high or consistent level, I think is probably the main concern there. And then his blocking, I have it graded at a 7.1. I know from watching him live that he can block in spurts, and he's got the strength to do so. So I'm not really too concerned with that between his size and strength. That puts him, for me, at the receiver position at a 76.5. Coach V, what are some areas of improvement you have listed for Carson here? And what is your overall grade and our overall grade?
Yeah, so blocking is gonna be lower for the lowest grade for most of these guys. So just throwing that out there. I gave him about a 6 or so. It's about average in my opinion. So it is what it is there. Route tree, I do want to come back to that. So it is an 8, and I'm saying that because you could tell that his tree really changed with what quarterback played. And over the last 2 years, Carson has had 5 different starting quarterbacks. And that's not an exaggeration. He's had 5 different starting quarterbacks, 3 different quarterbacks this last year alone, and the best one was out for most of them. So I understand him being a little bit underutilized because at that point, that's more on the quarterback and being like, well, I don't, can this quarterback really make this throw or not? Yes or no. Most of the time, it's no, right? And so you got to keep it simple, like, all right, screens, plays where he's wide open, right? So I'm giving him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt here, and also knowing that coaching staff over there as well. I know there were some looks where they gave him a little bit more to work with the quarterback. They were more comfortable throwing the ball with, if they even threw the ball. Sometimes they just ran wildcat, which does count as a different starting quarterback there. So that kind of hurt his film looking at the last 2 years where he kind of really broke out, which is still really impressive, but working with that limited spectrum, I mean, it is what it is. And so I'm a little bit on the higher side with that route tree, but that's why I'm giving him an 8. It's not because I don't think he can do it. It's just because, I mean, as far as the limits go of the last 2 seasons with, a 5 or 6 quarterback carousel, which none of these other guys have had even close to. It's pretty insane, right? It's definitely pretty insane. So there you go there. I do want to talk about your comment about the agility thing. So for me, all those head nods, stuff like that, I kind of factored in more into route running. I think he's a little bit more raw as far as a route runner. So I gave him an 8.1. That's where you kind of saw some of those minuses there. I just think he could be a lot more put together there, but it is what it is though. And so altogether, he has an 82.5 overall grade for me. Still good enough to be in our top 5. Kodey, do you mind if I talk about what his future is looking like here? And we could be quick about this one as well.
Yeah, it's going to be funny for the people who listened to the safety episode where we didn't know, and now we know on the wide receiver episode.
Yes, because literally these 2 episodes will be released a week from each other. But like I said, today is December 21st, and yesterday, December 20th, Carson Keach signed to become a Northern Colorado Bear. So happy to have him in the Greeley fam here. And he's going to play safety, which is going to be really fun for us, having a big body safety over there with the type of ball skills, receiver skills he has, that'll translate over. And so, that kind of just goes to show playing both ways, it pays off. Is that not right, Kodey? And how excited are you to have Carson become a Northern Colorado Bear?
I mean, we were talking about how nice it would be on the safeties episode, and I do personally like him a bit more at the safety position, just because I think he is a bit more fleshed out in that regard of the game. But it never hurts to just have an athlete on the squad, honestly. And I think that it was a steal. Really, I do. And I'm glad that, and I think that he's going to have chances to make plays sooner than later, be it in special teams, defense, or maybe even some offensive looks, because I know a ton of receivers had a mass exodus. And you know what? I like Keach more than some of the guys that were on that roster anyway on the receiving side of the ball. So if you know, you know.
That sounds really personal, but Kodey is talking about one specific receiver, not like a group or anything like that. I'm just putting that out there. It is directed at one, and you know who you are, so there you go there. But yeah, really excited for Carson to be up in Greeley, man. He's going to go do great things. Another top 5 guy that our Northern Colorado Bears were able to go get, which is always a good thing. So there you go. But I don't have too much more to say here. Our number 5 receiver in the class of 2024, ratings-wise that is Ponderosa's Carson Keach. But Kodey, do you want to go ahead and talk about the number 4 receiver in the class of 2024 in Colorado, according to us?
Well, what's funny about you saying number 4 that way is that number 4 is also number 3, who is number 4, who is number 3. Meaning that we have a very, very rare tie, actually, in rankings and ratings here between 2 prospects. But I'm going to talk about the first one here of the 2 that are tied, once again, being Drew Rollman, the tight end turned receiver at Chatfield here. this is a transition that I've been kind of seeing in the works since he was first making plays as a sophomore, honestly, in state championship games, and is a state champion, has one of the most notable plays in recent Colorado history, and he made some great plays this season. So let's talk about him here. Look, Rollman out of Chatfield, it's interesting because his highest grade for me is his separation slash release. And what's funny is the first thing is when I watch this, you can tell that he hasn't really that he's coming from the tight end position in some regards, just because he is a bit raw in some spots. And one of those is his stance. His stance is really wide. It looks like, I don't know, he's trying to stay on earth that's crumbling beneath him, or like it's splitting up right underneath him and it's really split. But honestly, it appears to help him get off the line and, shows that he can make some moves at the line of scrimmage to, throw off cornerbacks or linebackers or safeties. He faces a wide variety of different coverages and whatnot, and he's used in some pretty chill ways as well to maximize his efficiency here. I do have his route tree as being the highest because he is running routes from that tight end, that slot, that outside receiver position. I definitely think he's more of an outside receiver on the next level with his nice frame. And, I think that he's going to be really fun to watch. But something that I noted here is also he can win some vertical slash jump balls. And even though he doesn't get thrown a ton of them, it is worth mentioning, like I said, that in that state championship win for Chatfield over Erie, that he did have to make a very contested catch for that ring. So he was important to that. And then in addition to that, kind of building off of his separation slash release, I think that his route running is really solid. He once again has a ton of moves in his bag, honestly. And, I think that with his route running, it's fun to watch, honestly, because he has a few different moves. He can also hand battle with defenders and create separation a little bit more physically, honestly. He's got some head nods. He's got some stutter steps. He's got some, kind of double moves in the routes and whatnot. And then in addition to that, I think that his ability to improvise routes with a quarterback who is constantly breaking the pocket and scrambling and keeping plays alive, I think that is something that is going to only continue to be more and more important for the next generation of receivers. And I think that Rollman showed a great ability to adapt to that. Now, part of that could definitely be the fact that it's his same quarterback that he's been catching passes with for at least 3 years. If they were playing JV and freshman together, then even longer, and who knows if they played middle school together. But he showed a great, kind of eye for the field in that way during the open field and during the route running portion of his success. I also want to give some shout outs here. He has 3 7.8s, being his blocking, his body control, and his hand slash ball skills. I think that the ball just sticks to his hands really, really well. And yeah, I think that it literally just stays stuck. But I wouldn't say that he is making a lot of adaptations to the ball in the air, but I don't know if there's been a ton of opportunity for that either. But, Drew Rollman, he's probably the most diversified in a handful of areas receiver that we have. He does still have some raw spots, but I'll get back to that right after we hear what Coach V has to say in the positive category for Drew here.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I wasn't sure how good this film was gonna look. I kind of heard about him the last couple years, knew he was listed at a tight end for a really long time, but was making that transition more over to receiver. And, shout out our guy, Coach Thomas, over there at Chatfield. And, all the guys over at Chatfield, they do an excellent job with their guys. But, this was a player that I was very pleasantly surprised to watch, because for me, he's probably the most well-rounded receiver here. Not the most talented, I will say that, but well-rounded. First off, he's 6'3", 185, so that obviously helps. But as far as grading goes, his highest grade for me is an 8.6, but his lowest is only an 8.1 here. 8.6 for verticality and jump ball slash hands and ball skills. Kodey, you talked about that. I just love how reliable he is over there. I mean, he kind of, that's the tight end part of him, just being a good safety blanket that's going to make some tough catches when you need him to either move the sticks or to score, plain and simple. And, he has good enough hands where I look at it and I'm like, yeah, he could go to the next level and be a reliable pass catcher there. He's not going to be a Kadarius Toney type who's going to drop everything and cost you the game, which is always a good thing. So there you go there. And yeah, I mean, just altogether, just very well-rounded here. I want to talk about his blocking, which is the highest out of any of the receivers here, naturally, at an 8.4. I mean, he has a good amount of blocking film, and honestly, even if he was to convert over to tight end, I would feel good about it. It would take some time for him on the next level, but I'd feel good about it, and I'd feel good about his blocking, which is always a good thing where, you don't need to be a big imposing force to be a good blocker. Sometimes you just have that skill, and that's what he has. So there you go there. But altogether, Drew Rollman, just a very reliable receiver, good hands, solid athleticism. I mean, 8.3 for agility. I gave him an 8.1 for agility and 8.3 for speed, which is pretty, it's like average for the D1 level, I would say. Some might say maybe a little below average to point, but definitely good enough to play on the next level, no doubt. And like I said, just very impressed with how much he's developed here. Oh, and my bad, before moving on here, I gave him an 8.5 for separation and release. That was really something that, for him, I wasn't sure where that was going to be at, but it's obvious he's worked at it a lot, and I really like how he is coming off that line, getting separation, and I think that actually goes a really long way in him getting open, despite not being, I guess, like the freakiest athlete out there. Does that make sense, Kodey?
Oh, absolutely. I was also pleasantly surprised. And it's funny because, with his separation and release being rated so well, you and I still both have his elusiveness slash agility near the bottom of his rankings. Obviously, different scores and views on it, but he also just doesn't strike me as a world class athlete. And so I think that he has to be way more technically sound to be able to create the separation and get those open looks and create the room for making catches. I have his elusiveness slash agility at a 7. I don't really see a ton of wiggle in him and the ability to make like crazy cuts and, no spins or anything like that. Really. And, I think that his speed also isn't blazing. I have it at a 7.7. I don't think that he's the fastest guy on this list, but I think that, he's fast enough to make these other things kind of work for him. And despite his route tree being in red on my sheet with a 7.4, it is still probably the best route tree out of the top 5, at least in my view, just because they are asking him to do a lot. He runs an awesome wheel route. He runs a wheel stop, which is very rare, honestly. He runs corners, which you don't see a lot. Or he runs corners and he runs them well, I should say. And, some stop and goes and some deep crossers and just a nice variety, honestly. And part of that definitely comes from his experience as a tight end and seeing some of those more interior routes and being able to flesh those out. I think that helped out his score tremendously for me. And I mean, at the end of the day, I had him graded overall at a 77.2.
I will mention this. I had him rated at an 84 overall for me. Obviously, me and Kodey are going to grade it a little bit differently, so there you go there. But let's here. Should we talk about his outlook here before we talk about the other guy tied with him? Or what do you think, Kodey?
Yeah, I mean,
Right, let's do it.
seems to have been tough sledding a little bit here from what I can tell.
So what's his offers looking like as of right now? December 21st. Some might say it's a little late in the game, but I mean still in the game, obviously. But what's it looking like for Drew right now?
Mainly D2 looks here. The most notable ones that I could find was like Black Hill State and Adams State. And, I think that those are fine fits, if I got to be completely honest. I do think that he does still have some more development to go, regardless of what position they end up putting him at. I still think that the upside of being an outside receiver and, using those skills that he has blocking on bubble screens and stuff like that for some of those faster slot guys would be a great use of his skills and talents while continuing to develop, that athleticism and whatnot. But I do think that he has a lot of things that you normally would have to teach to receivers coming in that just rely on athleticism. And so, I think that these offers are pretty spot on. I see him pretty solidly, at least as a receiver or even a tight end, more on that D2 level or as a developmental, maybe sits for 2 years, even kind of player before seeing time on like the FCS level.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think he is firmly a D2 guy, in my opinion. He does a lot of things great, but I am looking at at this ceiling, and I don't know. I just don't know if it's like if like you develop him in 2 or 3 years, if he's gonna be like a freak athlete or someone that you could actually start. Whereas, he might just be more of a rotational guy, which is fine. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are rotational guys who contribute to great teams and whatnot. But just as of right now, I'm just not sure where that ceiling's at. And so I see him as a D2 guy, maybe an FCS guy, but more so D2 than anything, in my honest opinion. But still quality, though, you know?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that he's somebody on the D2 level that could see the field a little bit sooner. He's a guy that I think you can plug and play and hey, we need you to do this on this play. And he's going to go out and do it. I don't know if it's going to look dominant, but it's going to get done. And I think that he's also a pretty smart football player as well. He's been asked to do quite a few different things over the past few years, and he's done everything that's been asked of him. And, from a coach's standpoint and from a coachability standpoint, maybe you get a Drew Rollman as kind of your insurance to maybe a recruiter or prospect that's a little bit more risky, just because you do have some of those wild cards and whatnot. And, if you have a Drew on your team, then you're always going to have somebody that can do what you need them to do, is kind of my high praise for Mr. Rollman here at the 4/3 spot. Coach V, if you don't have anything else to add to that, I'll talk about the other guy here as well.
Yeah, I mean, all I gotta mention to kind of wrap this one up is that he'll set the standard for your receiving group, and I think that does also matter too. So just pulling that out there. But yeah, go ahead and talk about the guy that is tied with him as far as PMC grades go, like PMC average grades go. These two players are tied with the exact same grade, which I feel like is the first time this has ever happened in PMC history since we've done these rubrics and grades. Isn't that right, Kodey?
I definitely can't think of a time where it's happened. And, I think that both these players are deserving of this spot. And this guy is a repeat athlete on these top five lists. So a familiar face, one that we've talked about plenty in the past few years, who definitely has some higher peaks, but maybe some lower valleys here that kind of balance it out. And that is Arapahoe's very own Charlie Eckhart here, who one of the first notes that I put on here for hand/ball skills, Coach V, I don't know if you like slowed this down and rewatched it as many times as I did. And I know that it probably shouldn't seem that impressive, but this dude caught a screen pass without looking at the ball. Did you notice that in that one like it wasn't even a bubble screen. It was like a flat bubble screen left. And he's looking upfield and just catches the ball without looking the ball into his hands. Not a great habit, by the way, kiddos. Don't do that. But, oh my God, talk about a natural. Did you catch that?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I did not.
Well,
I saw
run
after the catch part, which was pretty cool, but no.
Yeah, I kind of it's little things like that in the details that definitely do get me here with these receivers, but also Charlie Eckhart is somebody who can put an exclamation point on plays as well. His elusiveness/agility I have rated at an 8.7, and his speed I have rated at an 8.5. Both those are amongst the highest out of any receivers in the state, and I think that these were very well exemplified in his huge performance against Heritage, which while I know is a 4A school, they at the time did have D1 talent in the secondary that he was finding pockets against and beating in foot races, which was pretty nuts. And he also did a lot of his damage against Cherry Creek, who's known to have a very solid secondary basically year in and year out. And one of the cornerbacks, oh my gosh, I man, that's a little disrespectful, but one of the highlights against Creek was him snatching ankles so hard. I mean, the defensive back looked lost. With the ball in his hands, Charlie is very, very dangerous, and he gets the ball pretty often here, and it even grew more this past season, I would say. But his verticality slash jump ball ability, I have as an 8.1. That was kind of an exclamation point put onto us when he recorded the only touchdown of an Arapahoe legacy game last year. So not this past season, but the year before that in 2022, where the final score was 10-3, and the only score was a Charlie Eckhart jump ball. So at an 8.1, that's also like a 3-star caliber talent. And then his body control, he has excellent stumble recovery, I will say, and is hard to be brought down. He's very rarely, if ever, brought down by the first guy who hits him here. And, I think that on top of, in his elusiveness slash agility, he had a hurdle. And I mean like a legit hurdle, not somebody diving at his ankles and he just steps over them. I mean, he hurdled a kid. And so his athleticism just continues to pop off the film here and just continues to impress me. Now, I'm probably still going to be accused of some Homer bias here, but I mean, if I was really Homer bias, he would not be number 3. He would have been higher on this list, but he was number 3 on my personal list and is number 3/4 on this list as well. So I think that it's pretty fair here, especially given some of his areas of improvement that I'm just going to take over and talk about here, like his, his blocking's fine. It's at a 7. He was asked to block quite a bit, but his route tree absolutely kills him here. It's at a 6.1. Shout out the Warriors and that school that just finally figured out to pass the ball this past year. So not a ton of evidence of doing all of that work and developing a really big route tree. Pretty simplistic. And on top of that, his route running, I mean, he has like a head nod, but, he's not the type of guy that is going to run like a perfect stop and go right now. It's a little bit on the lazier, like speed cut side of things, which is fine. That's what gets you, 2.5, almost 3 stars because he does all those speed cuts well. But making things a bit more crisp is something that I'd want to see worked on from him at the receiver position. Stop and go, really selling that curl and then being able to stick your foot in the dirt and get back up to top speed is something that I think he's more than capable of, but just hasn't shown a ton of. Versus, just giving like a little hand wave, pretending like you're going to stop, and then continuing to run that route and whatnot. Also, his separation slash release, I have it at a 7.8. I mean, it's fine. It's good, even. And he has a few ways to get off the ball, and he's also somebody who doesn't mind physicality, but just nothing too crazy. I think that you can kind of see the difference in this from receiver to receiver in almost how athletic they are, I guess, where they can get away with some other things. Like Charlie can get away with his route running and his separation slash release not being A1 just because his speed is an excellent ace up the sleeve, honestly. And his ability to win contested catches and his ability to shed tackles and his ability to juke people and hurdle them. That doesn't create a sense of urgency, I don't think, for him to create separation and, create a ton of yards, which he does do. Like I said, it's not like it's non-existent. It's still at a 7.5 for route and 7.8 for separation slash release. But I think that the bag is just not super in depth. And then lastly, I mean, his field awareness slash vision is a 7.9. I mean, we see plenty of opportunities with him getting screens and returning punts and returning kicks and whatnot. And I mean, he can smell blood in the water, but I just don't see it being like a perennial go-to elite skill that he's going to win on every single time, especially on the next level, should he be getting these receiver looks. Now, I kind of alluded to all of them, and his final grade for me was at a 78.3. Coach V, I'm going to pass it back to you for you to just give your overall synopsis on Charlie Eckhart here and then maybe talk about some outlook.
Yeah, so Charlie Eckhart, this is another one that we've been watching for a couple of years here. This last year, I only got to watch him against Grandview, but he obviously made an impact in that game. And Charlie, he's the type of receiver that is going to make a lot of damage happen with the ball in his hands. Now, everything leading up to that, it's fine, right? The grades I feel like that I gave him reflect that, like, a lot of 3 stars literally do this. Like, they're just great athletes that'll make a lot happen after the catch, but may not be as polished before that. And so let me go ahead and talk about what I'm, referring to here. So I gave him a 9 for field awareness and vision, 8.8 in hands and ball skills. He has very good hands, as good as you could want from a next level receiver, from a D1 receiver. I'm very sure that he is that as far as hands go. Now, field awareness and vision, I think this is really where he makes his money here. You kind of see it on some of his kick returns and special teams film here, but when he gets the ball in his hands, especially on those screens, and he just goes to work, it's special. He is a tough dude to bring down, has great vision, kind of like a running back out there, but the way he's just able to set up blocks, accelerate, decelerate, make cuts here and there, it's very surgical, and very, how should I say, just very high IQ plays when out in space. And just extremely efficient, and he's going to go get the job done. He's somebody whose impact is automatically felt because of how dangerous he is with the ball in his hands, and that reflects with the speed, which I gave an 8.5, 8.7 for agility, elusiveness as well. Like I said, I'm just going to keep reiterating, great with the ball in his hands. Now, everything else, gave him an 8.5 for route running, 8.6 for separation / release. Route tree is an 8, but it definitely could be lower. It's all just, I don't know. It could be better, right? There are definitely flashes there where his route running looks crisp and it's great, but there's also, not as much you can do with a limited route tree, and obviously they're opening up the playbook more so than they did before Arapaho, that is. But up until this point, it's just okay, right? It's just okay. Charlie definitely makes it look better with him being as great an athlete as he is out there. So I do want to say that. Those are just things that I've noticed where route running, it could be rounded off sometimes, or it's not as crisp as it definitely can be. And that's definitely an issue there. As far as releases goes, you don't see many corners that'll just go press bump with them. And if they do, I feel like they're not that talented. And so, or
bad news.
Yeah, bad news. Well, I don't want to say not that talented, but just not as athletic as him. So they can't really go foot for foot, I guess. I don't know. It's just not there, and there are some matchups that I really wish that I was able to see. Like, I would have loved to see a Ramon Pacheco from Pine Creek play him, but they never did in the regular season in pads, I'm pretty sure. So that's definitely something that I wish I saw there, as well as some other corners as well. But even then, he doesn't have to have a crazy amount of releases because there's not that many guys who are going to challenge him like that. But that's obviously going to change on the next level. So with all that being said, I think I went over all my grades here. I gave him an 82.9. He's actually my second rated receiver personally for me here, but right now he is tied at 3. And, don't get it twisted. Like, he's a great athlete. Obviously, at safety, he did his thing there. But at receiver, I just think he's definitely somebody who's a little bit more raw. He's somebody who, if you get the ball in his hands, he's going to make plays. But you got to work on some of those things before that for him to really translate to the next level properly and consistently be a threat and be, more than just a rotational guy. Is that fair to say, Cody? That sounds a little harsh, but honestly, there's a lot of guys that could do what he can do, but maybe even better too.
Yeah, there's plenty of great receivers at the, plenty of great athletes, at the receiver position. So I don't disagree with you at all in that regard. and think that, yeah, there are some more finite details that Charlie is going to have to work and focus on. I mean, but I think that obviously the upside of, a player like Eckhart is that he has the athleticism to pull off the moves. It's just a matter of practice and repetition with them. I mean, get him working on the ladder for, like 10, 20 minutes a day, and he will have quite a bag to go. Get him working in tires and whatnot and working on those releases. I think that he has, kind of an idea of what to do as well, just because of his experience on the defensive side of the ball and maybe some things to expect from being a great defender, an even better defender than he is a receiver, honestly, as much as that pains me to say because, I mean, go offense. But, I think that his athleticism is definitely the key to opening all these potential doors that he has. I mean, dude has crazy offers, crazy amount of Ivy League interest here with like Harvard, Cornell, Penn, Dartmouth, Princeton. Is Columbia? I think Columbia is an Ivy League as well.
It is.
And then,
come on.
Oh my! Well, I was definitely never looking at those schools to go to, so forgive me, the brainiac Coach V on the show. But he also has some other offers that are interesting. Like I look at a Washington State, I look at a South Dakota Air Force recruits Colorado very, very well. And if he does go to Air Force, I definitely think he would be playing safety because there's not really a lot to do at receiver for Air Force, or, just as an athlete as well. He is somebody who got some handoffs and some tosses out of the backfield. So he's somebody who can make impact plays for you in multiple facets here. And then the Nevada offer as well that I think is definitely interesting, in a CSU one. I know from a while back. I don't know if that still stands with transferring and everything, but I do think that he is a Division I talent. Maybe not right now at the receiver position, but I do think that if you can sit him for a year, I think that he's on the track to be developed into an awesome receiver, even though I still probably like him a little bit more at safety with his athletic range benefiting that kind of defensive back end a little bit more here.
Yes. Look, he's a great athlete. There's a lot that you could workshop, but if you sit him for 2 years, he's going to be a really interesting player that you could plug into pretty much any D1 offense. And yeah, we'll just have to see. But I do agree, he's probably a better safety than receiver. So there's that. But
probably, isn't that what the numbers say from our grades?
I don't.
Maybe
I need to check because I feel like my grades, if you look at like just the numbers.
Oh no, you do have him rated high. You have him rated higher as a receiver. Okay. I have him rated higher as a safety. Yeah, isn't that weird though?
I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean because he does a lot.
That fit our bias and our agendas that we push. You being the defense guy, me being the offense guy.
He does a lot with the ball in his hands, and I feel like that is harder to teach than everything else. Like you could teach releases and route running and all the small stuff, but like when it comes down to like, hey, go get me a first down or a touchdown, like I can't run the route. Like I can't run it for you. You just gotta see it, and if you don't, then well, shoot, I don't know. So that is one of those things. Like, and you kind of see when you evaluate football players, there are certain qualities that you look at and you're like, if they have this quality, I am offering them a full ride almost solely on this quality because I could workshop everything. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And Charlie is definitely one of those players where you just see his athletic ability and it's like, yeah, no, he should definitely be on our roster. And yeah, no, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying or any takes. I think that he's definitely a D1 talent here, just because his athleticism really is that special.
For sure. Well, that being said, we got through our tie there. Kodey, do you mind if I talk about our number 2 receiver in the class of 2024?
Send it. I mean, he's in your own backyard, isn't he?
He is.
Spoiler.
So, the number 2 receiver in the class of 2024 in Colorado is Doherty's Solomon Latimer, the 6'3", 175 pound, I think, receiver from Colorado Springs. Look, this is a kid that we've had on our radar for a minute now, I would say. Shout out Team Full Gorilla. Went to their tryouts maybe 3 years ago, I want to say, or 2 years ago at this point. It's probably closer to 3 years now, which is crazy, back in 2021. But, this was a guy that we saw him get into the route running lines and the one-on-one lines and all that stuff. And he kind of popped off immediately for us. And me being me, and obviously, shout out TFG giving us the rosters and, being able to see what school they're from. I saw the name Doherty on there, and, me being a former Spartan, I was like, hold up, who's this kid? And so that's basically history, because he has turned up having 2 excellent junior and senior year seasons since then, and being one of the best in all of Colorado here. But, with that being said, let me talk about why, though. So, to start out with my grades for Solomon Latimer, gave him a 9 for body control, 8.9 for hands and ball skills. Let me talk about that body control first. So, you see that in his route running. You see that in him after the catch and him making catches. I mean, he's just a very balanced dude here at 6'3", 170, and he's not like the heaviest guy, but so he can be thrown around just a little bit. I will acknowledge that, but because of his balance and body control, he's able to make plays that I would feel like a lot of stronger dudes would be able to make, that have maybe 15 to 20 pounds on him, but he's making it at much less here. And so that kind of projects really well moving forward for me, or at least in my eyes it does, moving forward here, because of that body control, which is so rare and really hard to teach, and it applies to all aspects of his game, plain and simple. Just a very controlled football player out there. He knows what he's doing, and he's going to make big plays in a controlled way if you give him a chance. Now, talking about hands and ball skills, he has a very reliable hands. I got to see him, I want to say twice here, against Coronado, who's not a very good team, but had a good safety over there. And then against Mesa Ridge, which wasn't as close a game, but he still did his thing. He still did his thing in that one. And I mean, like I said, when you give him a chance, he's going to go make a play. Just great body control, great balance, the ability to just kind of twist into some really tough catches. Absolutely insane, and he finishes the play as well, which you got to love here. I'm going to rattle off some other grades here before I pass it to you, Kodey, but gave him an 8.6 for field awareness and vision, 8.7 for verticality and verticality and jump ball skills. He could get up there, he uses that frame really well there, which I love. 8.6 for speed and agility, 8.6 for agility, 8.7 for speed, and then gave him an 8.6 for separation and release there. Just a pretty well-rounded player, and he's somebody who really got keyed in on this last year, but still put up numbers, got over 1,000 yards, got over 10 touchdowns, I'm pretty sure, as well. A whole ton of receptions. I mean, he just brings in so many receptions for this Doherty team over there, and he was arguably, I don't think this is that controversial. I think he was the MVP of this team and of that offense, being able to watch them so much. I mean, the offense really revolved around him. And for an offense to revolve around a receiver, you gotta be a special type of dude. You gotta be a special type of beast out there. Plain and simple. And yeah, I mean, love his game. He's a tough dude out there. A little bit lighter, but he definitely plays up, in my opinion, and that goes a long way for me. Kodey, what do you think about what I had to say there? And why don't you go ahead and talk about some of his strengths, and if you want, some of his areas of improvements as well?
Yeah, so Solomon, like you said, we've had eyes on this guy for some time, and I remember watching the routes that he was running the first time I watched him run routes and thinking, yeah, this guy's probably going to be top 5 material someday, and here we are a few years later at the number 2 spot, and that's where my ranking has him as well. And I do think that his opening play on his highlight is just the best way to capture what he's about. That the, you know, curl and spin and go route was just so smooth. And I think that that's a great way to describe him. And like you said, he's not maybe the biggest guy when you look at like body control, but when we're looking at it, he's just so controlled of all of his movements. He's so smooth with any like sudden adjustments or change of direction to go, which I mean is elusiveness and agility, sure, but also his ability to, get hit and just kind of roll off of that hit and continue to pick up yards. And, even when he stumbles, he recovers all in one motion, honestly. And so that combined with his craftiness in his routes, gives him an ability to make some great plays. Now, his route tree is not the most diverse, but he makes the most. He turns pennies into dimes. He turns nickels into corners here, or into quarters, and, makes profits with some of the moves, the head nods, the footwork that he also shows that I think, is attributed in his route running at that 8.3 for me, but is also definitely accounted for in that body control and whatnot. And then I also think that his ability to read the field and, stay on his feet is kind of insane. I mean, one of his highest grades for me is 8.4 field awareness / vision. There's a play where he catches it on the left side, sheds tackles, gets all the way across the field, makes a move on one more defender from heading left to right and then back right to left and scoring on the play. It's ridiculous. I mean, this play should have ended 40 or 50 yards ago, and there goes Solomon just waltzing into the end zone here. So he is solid in a lot of ways here. I also like his hands here at an 8.5. It's actually the second highest grade out of the top 5 here for me with his hand / ball skills. He does one thing that I wanted to mention here is adjust to the ball in the air. It was not always 100% on target, or, if it's a back shoulder, or he stops before the defender and he undercuts them to the ball, or he can catch it over guys as well. He does a great job of just kind of contorting into great positions to make plays on the ball and pick up chunk yards and be a consistent threat, honestly. Now, those are all solid. I have his speed and elusiveness at an 8.3 and an 8, respectively. I think that he's given some good opportunities to make some big plays. And I will say that his display of speed is a little inconsistent, but at its best, it is definitely next level. And I do think that, he gets off the line pretty well. But I don't think that he has a huge bag. And so there's not a ton of variety or even expertise in his releases, I would say. His separation / release, I have graded at a 7.7. I mean, I thought it was fine, but I definitely think that there's plenty of room to improve, or, something else that you even mentioned, Coach V, that I think might have impacted this even, or the way that it came off on film, is that Doherty did lose one of their premier linemen for, a splash of this season. And so you kind of don't have time to run some of these deeper routes and flex some of these more intricate separations or releases here, because you just got to get open as soon as possible. And I think that he does a good job at that, with the route running at an 8.3. And I also think that his field awareness translates a little bit to off the ball. He's finding those soft pockets in the defense. He's finding those windows that his quarterback can make the throws in, and he's getting open then and there. So I salute all of that. And while I start to transition a little bit, I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth with separation / release being an area of improvement, but I just wanted to note that here a little bit. And then, some of the other things that I have not graded as high, his verticality / jump ball. I mean, he does win jump balls, but I think it's, more on a 2, almost 3-star kind of level. I don't think that, he's not necessarily my first choice out of these guys to really throw fades to and whatnot, and has not shown that level of just like ridiculousness, especially like watching, to kind of tie it in here, Jeremiah Smith's film, and then watching these guys. I was like, now Smith, that's a guy who wins a stupid amount of jump balls and bails out some pretty bad throws here, which Solomon, like I said, has the ability to do, but maybe just not on the highest level of doing that, I guess, if that makes sense, on like a 77, on a C+ level here. And then his route tree definitely struggles here a little bit. I give it a 7.2 just because, I mean, a stop and go or, what have you. That's not on all of these guys' highlight tape. So it's good to see that. And then he does get to make some maneuvers around the line, but once again, just not nearly as extensive as some of these other guys that aren't even on the list, honestly, who you can tell these offensive coordinators and coaches were really trying to give them the most opportunities to do some damage to the opposing team here. Yeah, so all of that added up, that's a 79.6. Coach V, did you say your final grade here or talk about any of his outlook?
I'll say my final grade. I gave him an 82.3 here. Lowest grades were a 7 for route tree, 6 for blocking. The route tree kind of went down this junior compared to senior year, just because you also had a new quarterback who was like a sophomore as well. So I don't know how many double move deep routes you're gonna make your sophomore quarterback throw here. Which he eventually grew into it, but it took some time to kind of get that connection. So obviously, when you have something that's not working as well, you kind of just take it out of the playbook, right? Just something to take out and keep it simple. And then they did lose their starting left tackle, who was this big 6'6", 300-pound behemoth. So a lot of what they did, especially by the time I got to watch Solomon against Coronado and Mesa Ridge, which is pretty early on in the season still, it was just a lot of quick stuff. Like, let's just get him the ball and he'll go to work, right? And so he's going to be limited in that, as well as separation and release. Now, obviously, I got to see him live, so I got to see a lot of that separation and release more against players who did, try to play him close and whatnot. And I mean, still not enough time to throw those kind of routes, but still got to watch those live. And so I liked what I saw there. So I'm just going to defend my grade a little bit there. But altogether, though, 82.3. Talking about outlook, though, he has pretty much all D2 offers. Western, Fort Lewis, I think CSUP, right? CSU Pueblo as well. Kodey, I don't think I saw any more offers as of right now, December 21st. I will say this. I know some of that reason was because his grades. There were some struggles there. I'm not going to go too much into that, but I remember seeing his GPA and thinking that's a little... It's not failing, but it's on the lower side of things. And obviously, he played in every game, so, he was eligible. But it is a little... I don't know. From a recruiting standpoint, you look at anything below a 3, and it's like... Or even a 3 is a little low, and I don't know. You think maybe, I don't know. There might be a story there, right? And that's not fair. There's a lot of nuance there, but I am just going to put that out there. Kodey, what do you think about his outlook here? He is getting a lot of D2s, but I think he is somebody who could play FCS ball, though.
This may be one of those instances where we're looking at the best possible route for football specifically might be the JUCO route, just because that Division I upside is definitely there. And I think that he would just benefit from more and better looks and, filling out a little bit more and just having a year, honestly. I mean, that's something that with the transfer portal being as much of a revolving and wide open door as it is, that you could potentially achieve through like D2. But, I do think that it is something worth considering here and saving some money and just comparing your financial options between those two routes, I think is great. I think that he's somebody who could really light it up on the D2 level. I think that he's somebody that could get in sooner than later and, have like a handful of touchdowns, honestly, maybe like a 3 or 4 touchdown freshman season, or, like a solid amount of receptions, I should say, is probably an easier way to put that or benchmark it on the D2 level. But honestly, I do think that, and if you do think that grades are a struggle, that's a great place to bounce back. And I mean, we've covered guys on the show and have had an interview with guys on the show that went to JUCO, mainly got their GPA up, honestly. And I mean, made some plays as well on the JUCO level between, like a Martin Ibarra and a Sam Flowers and whatnot, and then got that option on the FCS level with a way bigger bag kind of on the horizon there. And, I think that's a great angle to work here. I don't know. Am I tripping, or can you totally see this path as a possibility to enrich Solomon's football career.
No, yeah, I mean, it's pretty stereotypical when you think about JUCO guys, and all that stuff. And there's no shame in it, because here's the thing. If you could play, you could play. And Solomon could definitely play with his skill set. I mean, he's not like... How should I say this? He's not like one of those guys who are more well-rounded than anything. He has a couple qualities, like I mentioned earlier on in this episode, that you look at, and usually you'd be like, yeah, I'm offering this guy right away, right? But, you have some concerns here and there. He is also a little bit thinner. I think taking some time to go play on the JUCO level, get a little bit bigger, get some, more highlights, and get more film would go a long way here. The production on the high school level, I mean, there's no question about it. It's great. It's big time, right? Easily, I would say, the most productive player on this top 5 list for sure, from a receiver standpoint. But sometimes you have to take that alternate route, and I don't think there's any shame in that. I also wouldn't mind if he went to a D2 as well. CSU Pueblo, and okay, this is where my bias comes in, because CSU Pueblo, I realize, is the only D2 that I've walked around campus before. And I like what they have at CSU Pueblo. I really do, and they're building something great over there. I like their new coach. Kodey, obviously you and me got to listen to him speak a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, for state and whatnot. And, I think Solomon could go to CSU Pueblo and be somebody that could get in that rotation, or at least compete, and, maybe look at somewhere else here in a couple years if he really wanted to. But even then, I mean, there's plenty of guys who make it on the D2 level too. It's just whatever works best for you and wherever you feel comfortable too, because regardless, I mean, your next home is what you choose, right? So you could think about, stepping stones and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, sometimes, your home's right in front of you, which is really cheesy, and that's how I'm going to end my segment when talking about Solomon Latimer here. But
what a cornball.
He's a great football player, and regardless, I'm going to be rooting for him wherever he goes. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing here. And Solomon Latimer, number 2 rated receiver in Colorado in the class of 2024. Before we get to our number 1 here, like I said, there were a ton of guys who we watched here. There were some guys in consideration as well, that we saw during the season, like a Jimmer Ware, an Owen Mellish, a Joe Cottingham, that all kind of caught our eyes a little bit. There's also, like, on the 1A level, a Jose Gonzalez who's been producing for quite some time. So all of those guys were, at least considered and looked at in some way. Brant Jackson on the 2A level. And then some guys that we watched a bit more on the heavier side here that, we're pretty close here as we kind of ascend. Micah Lumpkin here from Chatfield. Hunter M. Garten here from Westminster. Very fast receiver. One of the fastest receivers in the state, actually, from a pure speed standpoint. CJ Reese, the Mountain Vista cat here. Sonny Endicott, great route runner. Shout out to Vista Ridge, that just really gets the most out of the receivers and runs one of the most modern offenses in Colorado, and it leads to some good looks like this. Jackson Hansen out of Ralston Valley, high volume and definitely like the number 1 target on that team, and a big playmaker in a variety of ways, who just narrowly missed out. And Logan Hutchin, who is a teammate of Solomon's as well. So quite the offense they had over there down in the Springs. But Coach V, there is one above the rest here, according to our average rankings, of course. Do you have any other comments on these honorable mentions before unveiling our numero uno?
No, not too much. There's always going to be some great receivers out there. We want to make sure we canvas and look at as many as we can. Obviously, there's the ones we see live, and then the ones we have to look at a lot more in the off season here. But I feel really confident about this top 5 we have here, including our number 1 receiver in the class of 2024 in Colorado. That is Mullins Jordan Leslie, the 6'1", 175-pound receiver, who, in my opinion, has a great story. So I'm just going to go ahead and give some context here. So I feel like he's more of a basketball player, or was more of a basketball player for Mullen. And so going into his junior year, didn't play high school football before, got in there, played his second year as a senior, and got some offers too, and actually already committed as well. And, for a second year, for a player who only played 2 years of high school football, and I don't know how many years of middle school football, if at all, he played, that's pretty impressive. That speaks to how much potential he has, and he has a lot of it for sure. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Starting with his highest grades, gave him an 8.9 for body control, 8.8 for field awareness slash vision. Let me talk about the 8.7s as well, which I gave in hands and ball skills and separation and release. Now, when it comes to Jordan Leslie, this is a kid who, even though he has only played 2 years of high school football, this last year was his second year of high school football. He has a lot of athletic talent, and a lot of it. And it translated pretty well to the football field. When you watch him get the ball in his hands, he is so shifty and elusive and dangerous after the catch. He's somebody who's straight up going to go get a play or go make a play and get upfield, And that's what you could hope. That's really like every OC's dream, just somebody who could get upfield, make plays, and be that guy for you and be that legit wideout one for your squad. And that's who he really emerged as this season. I mean, you watch him get out there and, he has the limited experience, and then he just gets the ball in his hands and is just able to do so much by seeing things that even seasoned receivers don't see. It's impressive. He sets up blocks really well. He uses those sidelines really well. Very aware of his surroundings and who he has to make miss before getting to the next level and all that stuff. It is truly the definition of, just natural, great instincts and athleticism for Jordan Leslie. And then some other things I really like as well. I mean, gave him 8.6 for speed, 8.5 for agility as well. I mean, he's an athlete that could play on the next level. He is just real shifty, like I said, has a lot of speed and agility to go make something happen after the catch, like a Charlie Eckhart we mentioned before. I think they're very similar in that aspect of things. And yeah, I mean, he's really impressed. He's really impressed these last 2 years, just being able to do all that with the ball in his hands and show, just how much of a natural football player he can be when he's out there. And like I said, compared to these other guys who have played football for so long and whatnot, it's definitely saying something. It's definitely saying something for Jordan to come into Mullen and just kind of earn the number one wideout spot over, some guys that they might bring in through transferring or whatever one may have you. For him to take over that spot and just be so dominant with the ball in his hands is truly special. So there you go there. Kodey, I don't want to take up everything, so I'm just going to go ahead and pass it to you. What are some things that make Jordan Leslie special and really separates him from the other guys on this list outside of the experience?
I mean, once again, to reference, the film doesn't lie, right? That's why we watch it. And the very first play on his film was one of the most attention-grabbing plays I've seen probably in my time watching film, period. He is lined up against Denver East, I want to say, and the cornerback is pressed and has outside leverage, And so what does Jordan do? Well, the first thing he does is attack that outside shoulder, sell that vertical here, and get that cornerback to, flip the hips and get ready to follow on the outside. And, that cornerback thinks that, all right, I'm just going to ride that route out towards the boundary and force a really tough catch with my extra defender being the sideline. But then he immediately flips those hips with that high level of athleticism and then attacks the inside, forcing that cornerback to overcorrect and then breaks to the outside again. This cornerback is all kinds of turnaround. And Jordan is making these plays against schools that, while the school itself may not be the most successful, they're not known for having bad athletes like a Rangeview, like a Denver East. They have guys who are really athletic out there, but you can just see that while Leslie might be raw in experience, He's raw in all caps for that athleticism, and that way that he gets open is fantastic. But he brings it home because this pass is underthrown. And while we have some guys who have some contested catches and may have something that's close to a moss, this is mossing someone on the opening play of your film. I mean, literally, this should have been an easy interception for the defender, but Jordan just jumps to the moon here and rips that ball away from the defender like an absolute beast. And so, when that's the opening play, that is quite the way to open up the film. But I mean, he continues to show just a great level of craftiness and, agility as well. While his agility and elusiveness with the ball is very evident at an 8.7, he's somebody who can create room in a phone booth and somebody who can shed tackles and change direction very seamlessly and honestly to the extent that like a video game can change direction at times. That makes him super, super awesome to watch. And I even think that his elusiveness holds up nationally with like Jeremiah Smith, honestly, and even exceeds that. But I'm falling back a little bit here. He also is the fastest receiver, hands down, out of honorable mentions or top 5 guys that we've seen. And I think that that is another thing that makes him fantastic. And his route running is just so creative. He can run in the simplistic route tree that he was given, that is his lowest grade at a 7.1. He was able to do so much with it. I mean, simple goes are not so simple because of the things that I can tell he is adding into those routes. They're not designed. They are him finding ways to get open, kind of like what Coach V was saying is such a great strength is, hey, we need this play. We need this to happen. We need a first down. We need a touchdown. Jordan is going to find that in not as raw of a way, but definitely in more of like an improv scat kind of way is the vibes, honestly. And so between that, his separation / releases are dynamic. They're rated at 8.5. That's the highest out of anybody on this list. Like I said, he has verticality and jump ball skills. Maybe not always called upon to do that, so that came in at 8.1. His body control at 8.6. There are multiple defenders that go to tackle him, I should say, at the hips and can't bring him down because he's just that powerful, that controlled, and he understands the center of balance. He understands where his leverage is at, and he uses that to his advantage to shed legitimately solid tackle attempts. And so then if you're coming at him sloppy, you're definitely not going to bring him down, on top of his ability to spin or juke or cut out of the way and whatnot there. Combine that with his ability to, get punt returns, and even I think he was kind of a little underutilized in the screen game, even though that was one of the best ways that they thought to use him, which sounds odd, but it's just because he was a bit underutilized with the route tree in the first place. He's somebody who sees the field very, very well, makes a move, and, can also buy time for that vision because he's hard to bring down at that 8.2 grade. So, honestly, after yammering on for so long, what is the holdup and why does he barely crack an 80 for me? Well, I do think that his route tree hurts him pretty bad here. He has very little blocking in this current rendition of rankings and grading prospects here. So not really asked to do that. It's the lowest one on this list. And then, oddly enough, his hand / ball skills is at an 8, which is like kind of wild that it's in the red because it's fine with the rest of these guys. But, he does have sticky hands, but sometimes I do think that it can get a little bit too close to his chest for my particular liking here. But, I mean, at the end of the day, 80.1. Coach V, if you want to go over any grades that maybe you didn't get to, since you were so kind to pass the bar to me and not talk about everything, and then I proceeded to talk about everything, we're going to challenge you to come up with different ways to say a lot of the same great stuff, or maybe some of the more challenging stuff for Jordan Leslie here.
I honestly don't have too much here. Blocking is a 6. It is what it is. Route tree gave him a 7. They don't do anything crazy over there at Mullins, so there is that. I don't know. If I really had to nitpick, I guess route running, separation, release, you can nitpick it a little bit. I mean, you can argue that maybe he hasn't gone against the greatest like most refined talent when it comes to that stuff, like guys who would challenge his route running and releases like that. But, I don't know. I still felt like I really liked what I saw. Altogether, I think he's a pretty well-rounded receiver. You know what he's going to do out there. He's going to go run his routes. He's going to be shifty before and after the catch, and that's just going to be a straight issue. Now, there might be some things he doesn't understand from an experience standpoint, that is maybe yet to be seen, but personally, I just haven't seen that on the film yet. So that's kind of just where I'm at right now, personally. But yeah, I mean, overall, I gave him an 82.1. I think he's a solid FCS guy for sure. I don't know about Power 5, Group of 5, stuff like that, but FCS, I feel very, very confident about that. So that's kind of what I'm going to stick to right there. Kodey, you mind if I guess, talk about the future here and his outlook?
Yeah, go for it, since you're our Ivy League expert on the pod.
Yes, me, the Ivy League expert. But he has committed to Dartmouth. He committed pretty early, had a lot of interest this last offseason, but I'm pretty sure he committed right before his senior year started, which is pretty smart to do. Most high schoolers should do it if they get a good amount of interest that they like. And so he's going to go over there, hopefully get some of his college paid for just a little bit there while playing some sports. There might be a chance that he also plays another sport, whether it's basketball or track over there. We will see, but really excited for him. I think this is he could definitely play on this level. There's no doubt about it. There could be a chance that he could get in there and maybe be a rotational guy year one, but most likely he's going redshirt and then take a year at least, regardless, to go ahead and adjust to being at Dartmouth and all that stuff. And then after that, you could definitely see him getting on the field probably year 2 or so at the earliest. I don't think him not being on the field earlier will be because of his talent. If anything, it'll probably be, academics or maybe something with the playbook or whatever there. And that is just my honest opinion. I think he's more than talented enough to play on this level. Kodey, what do you think about his commitment here?
Well, I think it's always awesome to get those Ivy League looks. We got some real brains here at the receiver position, kind of historically here, honestly. I'm thinking back to like Nick Stone and stuff. And, Jordan Leslie, I think that he's somebody who can really make some big plays there. And he's somebody who potentially could see the field a little bit sooner than later because of his special teams prowess that he has. And I think that he's somebody who can be like an all-league player. I really do. But I wouldn't mind having him wait and just ironing out some of these things. And but I mean, 4.1 GPA, I'm sure he can figure out a route tree if I show it to him. And, the coaches would have to feel the same way, I mean, on that level. And, I think that he's somebody who can dominate, honestly. And, yeah, I do wish him the best of luck. So, yeah, that is the top 5 receivers here. In a little recap here, starting at number 5 for the class of 2024 receivers in Colorado, we had Carson Keach at a 79.5 cumulative, the Northern Colorado commit. Drew Rollman at an 80.6, and Charlie Eckhart also at an 80.6, with a variety of offers to those guys out of Chatfield and Arapahoe, respectively. At number 2, we had Solomon Latimer here at an 80.95 with some D2 interest, but some FCS upside out of Doherty. And then the number 1 spot goes to Jordan Leslie out of Mullen at a cumulative score of 81.1, who's committed to Dartmouth here. Coach V, this was an interesting batch of receivers here, and one that admittingly kind of had to grow on me, but I am excited to see how these guys do. And I do think that when we see historically receiver classes like this, it gives us some excitement for the defensive back and cornerback portion as well, as they seem to kind of alternate in that top end. But regardless, still very talented players here and ones that I had a fun time watching.
Yeah, same here. Receivers always fun to look at. And, obviously rooting for all these guys. And also, I know we haven't said this on any of our other episodes before, but if you make our top 5 list, it is a little bit of an automatic invite to come onto the show and interview. We'd love to talk to these great players, all the great players that have made our top 5 list, interview them, talk about last season, talk about the future, and just chop it up, and get the people of Colorado and of, the world to get to know these great athletes a little bit better. So there you go there.
We really have been forgetting to do that. God damn it. We do this every year. Every year we don't realize until a later episode. It's fine. I'm not upset about it, but I'm kind of upset about it.
So with that being said, go ahead and show us some love at Playmakers Corner on our social medias. Reach out to us on our social medias there on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter/X, and TikTok. We'll set up interviews there if it really comes down to it. And, that's a good place as well to see when more of our content will drop. Oh my God. we'll be dropping content constantly Monday and Fridays with these top 5 lists, which will be a whole ton of fun. So make sure you look out for all of those. And then we obviously have our short form stuff with our TikToks and our YouTube shorts as well there, where you can look at some of the previews from other episodes. So there you go there. And obviously show some love wherever you're listening to us, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Go ahead and leave a good rating, a comment, whatever. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you later. I've been one of your co-hosts, Simon Voyanos, a.k.a. Coach V.
And I'm the other co-host / the editor of this episode, Kodey Stoffer, who, Coach V, I'm just saying you haven't slipped up on any of these outros until I had to edit, so I just wanted to point that one out. But we'll catch you on the next edition of Top 5. Peace.